Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Down the Donut Hole podcast on Halloween. You know that day where you played tricks on people.
Halloween?
Mm.
What are you talking about?
Don't you play tricks on people on Halloween?
Well, yeah, but today's not Halloween.
Oh, April Fool then.
Oh, April Fool. Hey, you know something? If you play an April Fool's joke in England in the morning, then the person that you played it on is the fool. But historically, if you play that same prank in the afternoon, you are the fool.
Oh, we'll have to watch the clock then.
Yeah, keep an eye on things. We might be pushing up against it. What I was going to ask, on this very funny day, what's the worst prank anybody ever played on either of you guys? Hi, Des. I see you sneaking in.
He's got a package.
He's dead quiet. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, that's what it is. He shows up, but he doesn't actually say anything for the whole
He's
show.
here, but he's not here. Who's lying? Am I just telling tales? Or
I do. That was the prank.
what?
That was it?
Yeah, my ex-wife played on me.
How long did it take you to work that one
She said
out?
I do, and I believed her.
Oh, well, maybe in
Well,
the
you
moment.
did, though. You did.
In the moment, she did.
Is
And
it
how
a
about
prank-
you?
Is it a prank or a lie? That's the question.
Well, that's the other thing. You know, April Fool's Day is not supposed to be a day of get out of jail free for bullying. And so any pranks that you play that have a mean edge to them or are meant to belittle or hurt someone's feelings, that's no fair.
Then what's the point?
If that's what the plan is, then go back to the drawing board and think of something nice.
I'm
to
kidding.
do.
I'm friends with my ex-wife. She's
I know
she's
you
a
are.
great person.
She is a great person. She's stayed friends with the
Yes, she is,
family.
definitely.
So that's been a wonderful.
Plus,
thing.
I know she listens to the podcast. So
Oh,
She know-
that
she
doesn't
knows-
hurt. That doesn't hurt.
She knows how to hunt
That
you
goes
up.
in her column for sure.
Well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
it's an allergy day. It's a very polleny day, a very sniffly day.
I am feeling it. So if we sound,
It's nature's prank on me, I guess. I don't know. Watery eyes, itchy eyes, achy.
it is kind of
It's
a
April 1st, so
thing.
I guess that's spring. I don't know when spring is.
It's so beautiful. It's funny you should mention spring, because the idea of spring, the idea of the first day of the year being formerly under the Julian calendar, the first day of the year was at the end of March, beginning of April. When they changed from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, the first day of the new year became January 1st. And part of the history, it is believed, and I am no expert on it, and I'm not pretending to be, it's just the research has shown that the holdouts to the Julian calendar who insisted on continuing the idea that, we'll say, April 1st was the beginning of the new year rather than the new Gregorian January 1st, there were pranks played on those people to sort
Oh.
of call them out. And it was sort of mean-spirited.
I get it. You're just making all this up to prank us.
No.
I almost fell for it, that this was like all true what you were saying.
No, it is.
It was very convincing.
I
though.
know. I was
Yeah.
convinced.
Yeah.
Oh, you got us. You got us. What a great April Fool's joke.
Oh, I've got more.
None of that, what you just said, is true, everybody. She's
no.
making all that up.
Oh, no.
She got
no,
us
no.
all.
No. It is true. Calendars, especially the Julian calendar, had a lot of days that weren't on the calendar, that weren't specific. And in the early days, the calendars were not something that the general public knew about or understood.
Why did they change
were
it?
kept by priests.
Why'd they change it?
Well, I think part of the reason for doing that, for one thing, is certainly taking power. The old Roman calendar, the old Julian calendar, there was a lot of variables. And there have been many different ways over time of measuring time. So April Fool's is, in a sense, a nod to how we mark time. whether it's seasonally, whether we're looking at lunar cycles or stellar cycles, or perspectives from where you are in relation to constellations in the sky. And as time progressed, as people could get from place to place more easily and quicker, then the concept of time had to be opened up to include other places. In the early days, when it took a long time to travel from place to place, time was marked in a little small area. We could all agree that, what we perceived as the middle of the night, we can call that midnight. And we can call high noon when the sun is high in the sky. We can understand what that is, and we can mark the day. That's why you have sundials. They used to be called a sun stick or a shadow stick. And you could measure how much daylight was left. It didn't really mean high noon or a precise measure of time, but it meant how much time was left in the day to do your thing.
It sounds rude. What time is it? Check your shadow stick.
It does sound a little rude, I have to say. But because of that, and because of those, there were actually in the Julian calendar about 60 days that were not what we would call days, full cycles, that were not specified. They didn't have a name. They were sort of floating days. And how that intricate calendar with all of these variables worked was kept by priests, by astronomers, by very specific people who had power and a lot of mystery and mystique around what they understood and what they did. And they would make proclamations to people. Tomorrow or the day, or, coming up is the first day of spring or the first day of winter. And that was not known by general people. It was just the populace didn't know those days. They were announced by proclamation, and then everybody fell in. And if there was a festival, Saturnalia, Hilaria, remember the name Hilaria.
That's hilarious.
It is hilarious. And anyway, so then the festivals would happen. There would be a little bit of notice that it was coming up, and people would love all of that. But as travel became more efficient and more people could travel, then time couldn't be confined. The measure of time couldn't be confined to small areas, small regions, and it had to be opened up. So, and again, it's the difference between relationships to the sun and where you are. So long distances, certainly the time would be perceived differently.
You know what I heard about that calendar? I think it's the Gregorian calendar.
That's the one we have now.
Yeah. The Dark Ages, I didn't hear, nobody told me, but I read and watched some stuff about it, that the Dark Ages never existed, that it's like a fiction created by the church, and that the church just reset the calendar to the Gregorian calendar and moved it forward 500 years.
I haven't seen that, but I have heard that the Dark Ages, so to speak, weren't perceived as the Dark Ages by the people that lived then.
You can cite me as a source now, then.
That is fascinating. That is absolutely fascinating. I don't know.
Wouldn't surprise me. Manipulation by dogma.
Agencies who had the power.
Does that seem that's your story about the calendars that kind of made me think about that?
Absolutely. Well, that is really, really an interesting
Can you imagine if the Dark Ages... But I imagine there's archaeological evidence to dispute that, I suppose, huh?
Well, the time happened. The passage of time certainly happened. The days happened. But whether the people at the time considered it the Dark Ages, I don't... I'm sure that they just lived their everyday lives.
At the very least, it's a reference to the Renaissance, right?
Yeah. To a pre-Renaissance. Yeah. I think, speaking of this Festival of Hilaria, that was a fun festival, a Roman festival, and the word definitely hilarious comes from that.
Wait, is this your prank that you're making it up? Because I was going to tell you a little bit about where April Fool's Day came from.
I
And
would,
it was actually started by a woman who was disguised as a priest. Her name was April Hilaria. And she did a lot of charity work and stuff and would make the kids laugh. And
did she give him candy?
I don't know, I'm making that up.
Did she have a white beard?
I don't know, but I knew that you had a lot of stuff ready about the history. I know in the great April Fool's Day Eve pre-show extravaganza, we touched on that you were going to reveal some history about April Fool's Day.
Oh, I got
so
some
I was
stuff.
trying to come up with something to contribute, but I have nothing. I just made stuff up. So, all right, I want to hear some more. Let's hear some more.
This Festival of Hilaria, lots of fun, lots of funny business, little pranks, people dressing up. Like Saturnalia, also a Roman holiday, where there were sometimes role reversals. So the lord of the estates, and I'm using lord, a term more associated with England history than Rome's, but just a slave would change places with his master. The lady of the house would change places with a slave, and they would just take on those roles for a day in a lighthearted way, and they could get away with a lot in those roles, and so everybody looked forward to it, and it's fun, and
I
certainly
bet some of the
costumes
people look more forward to it than others.
Yes, I'm certain of that. But
That
let's
hasn't
face
changed.
it, slaves probably could get away with certain license that the nobility could not. You know what I mean? Because there seems to be a lot of rules about how everybody had to conduct themselves.
Well, I just want to say I'm sorry. I kind of disagree a little bit. I'm anti-slavery. So.
Oh my goodness. Where is this going? Anyway, so there are those, and this is a kind of a bombshell, I thought, when I read it. And I have a collection of cool old books that talk about curiosities and old observances in, just different periods of society.
Is this about the what is it? Hilarious?
No, that's just a nice aside.
Okay.
Some people believe that the word April itself comes from the Greek word for Aphrodite, and that April, that the word avrios, that it pertains to eye open, not eye visual, but eye associated with blossoms, and that like the time of spring where flowers are opening up, that's the connection there. There are other people who say that this April Fool's comes from a French holiday, Poisson Avril, the fish of April. And apparently there was an old custom that on the first day of spring, they would stick a paper fish or a fish cut out of a leaf or something.
I thought you were going to say that the fishermen would switch places with the fish.
Stick it on people's backs. And it was sort of like the kick me signs.
What'd they do?
They'd stick it like a paper fish, from what I understand.
In France?
Yes. And part of that was that the kind of fish, this fish of April, Avril, Poisson d'Avril, that it was a reference to kind of a dumb fish that moved and presented itself in huge schools that were easy to catch. So the concept of being easy to catch kind of translates loosely to being easy to fool. And so they would stick this on people's backs, and it was like the tradition of a kick me sign on your back, where you'd go around and people would be kind of giggling behind your back, and you wouldn't know it was there.
Like my wedding.
Your poor ex-wife. Oh, what a darling lady.
She's a saint.
She is a saint. She was a saint. And I'm glad you're still friends, by the way. And if she's still your friend after this, then she's a true friend indeed.
So basically, we can thank the French for April Fool's Day, in
Well-
addition to the Statue of Liberty and our country.
Yes. France, by the way, took the lead in the switch of New Year's from March 25th, April. And the reason there's that variable, March 25th to April 1st, again, is because those floating days, those undesignated days from the Julian calendar. So they took the lead in that. But there were holdouts. There were people who did not want to consider January 1st in the dead of the winter the beginning of the new year. And so people that were still celebrating the new year at the beginning of April, there was a concerted effort to kind of make them seem silly. And one of the things that they used to do was they would send urgent messages to a noble person, somebody like that. And the message would read, and I'm adding a little poetic license here, something, you are the fool, pass this on. Kind of like, you know about chain letters. Have you ever gotten a chain letter?
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Where you had to...
With savings bonds, I think they had some sort of pyramid thing going with
Yeah, where you had to contribute some money and then put some money in the envelope, stamp it, and mail it to the next person on the list. There'd be a whole long list. And then at the end, that person would get a bunch of
They do
bunch
that kind
money.
of-
yeah, the one that started it. Yeah, nobody else.
Yeah.
They do that kind of, not with money, but on Facebook. It's like, I just posted this thing, and so share it with 5 other people to get blessings. And I'm thinking,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
They did that with prayers, too.
They did that with the regular mail. Yeah.
threaten somebody with blessings.
Yeah, or not getting blessings.
Exactly.
So, but now with social media, you don't need to send anything anywhere. But back in those days, remember, it wasn't like that.
It's a utopia now, thanks to social media.
Yeah, I remember back before social media. And,
The ultimate barrier.
well, yeah, it brings us together, but it also has brought us further apart. So everything is a two-edged sword, I guess. Anyway, they would send it, and it would be kind of like those chain things. You are the fool, pass this along as fast as you can. And because now it would still be chilly, usually in a lot of places, they would send a servant, or sometimes they would say, no, you yourself must go and take this to the person of your choice. So a noble would rush out the door as fast as they could, usually without a coat, just go, take this message to your friend or some other noble down the way, and wait until you can hand it to him personally. And so they would go on these fool's errands. And so that's kind of where that comes from.
So it was like a pranking the nobles?
It was pranking among those who could afford to be pranked. I'm sure that the lower class peoples, I'm sure they got a giggle out of it now and again, but I'm sure a lot of that kind of tomfoolery resulted in more work for them.
And was he Mr. Foolery? Was he
Mr. Foolery. Here's another one that goes even further back.
But that's where Fool's Errand comes from, right?
Well,
Kind
that's
of.
one of the...
Interesting. See, these are things that people don't, they just say them all the time. They don't even think about them.
a fool's errand. And that has continued. And sometimes there would be something involved. Go and collect, 7 cakes and take those to your neighbor. And you remain the fool. And people would laugh until you have fulfilled this errand. And then they would have to add 7 cakes or whatever it was to it, and just kind of keep it going for the whole day. In Scotland, they did it that way. In Scotland, it was a 2-day affair, from what I understand. The first day was a hunt, the second day was a hunt. Let me double check my notes because I don't want to be passing out
So it was like a
misinformation.
2-part prank?
It's a 2-day affair. The first day was Hunt the Gowk Day, Gowk. And that's a cuckoo bird, or like a cuckoo bird, and it's sort of an emblem of a fool, something that's, not to be taken seriously. The second day was Taily Day, and that was another sticking things on people's back, like maybe the game of pin the tail on the donkey. Stick something on someone's back that they don't know, and everybody gets a good laugh and plays along.
Did you say
and doesn't tell them?
the Gowk?
Gowk.
Gowk. Okay, never mind.
Gowk.
And then cuckoo.
And that's sort of a Gowk apparently
Gowk
is
and cuckoo.
a cuckoo bird, or like a cuckoo bird.
Poor cuckoo gets such a bad rap. Self-esteem issues for that bird.
In Ireland, they did the urgent letters thing, passing from person to person, kind of like a hot potato. That's probably a good way to describe it. You want to get rid of that as fast as you could, and you'd send the fool further. And so where it would originate, these letters would originate, those people would get the best laugh, because each person that carried that letter further away from where it started, it got further and further and further, and more people got involved in the joke. And if you were carrying cakes or something, you could take some and add some and go along that way. And so it involved a whole region, and it would be fun at the end of the day to see how far your joke was carried. And I think maybe, and I did not read this, maybe, carrying a joke too far, that might be part of the etymology of that word. So I think that's really interesting. Now, on a deeper level, there is evidence from a newspaper way back in the 1700s, the late 1700s. It was March 13th, 1769. It mentions April Fool's Day, and it claims, this publication, the London Public Advertiser, this blew my mind, this little piece here, that April Fool's Day is a holiday observance referencing Noah of the Ark. Because if you remember the biblical story, after enduring this deluge for so long, at one point, Noah sends a dove off the ship to search for land. While the rain is still coming down, he sends the dove on a fool's errand from which it will never return. Or he took that chance.
And then he goes, gotcha.
And so, because of that mistake, it was a mistake. It was an error in judgment. And so, during this period of time, it was considered a fool's errand.
Wait, didn't the dove come back with some...
I think it was the second time.
Oh, okay.
That the dove was sent out. So it was, he sent the dove out from a ship on the first day of spring, but before the rain had stopped.
So I'm confused. Were they down to one dove the first time around that didn't come back?
Probably.
Well, then why do we have doves today?
And how did the animals not eat each other?
It must have.
And you know how many billions of bugs there must have been to have two of each type of animal? There's a lot of animals on Earth.
Some say that it was a DNA.
This is
cache.
ridiculous.
I know. It is interesting, though. Anyway, so it's a remembrance of Noah and the dove, and sort of a celebration of the first dove who was sent out to find some evidence of dry land.
And how big was this ark?
I wish I could answer all your questions, but I'm just going to admit, I'm going to say, I don't know. Anyway, here's another reference that has a religious aspect to it, and this one also blew my mind. There are, in Christian circles, beliefs that April Fool's Day is a reference to the Passion of Jesus Christ, which we celebrate at this time of year, after Passover and between Easter and this, that remembers how Jesus was sent from Annas to Caiaphas, Caiaphas to Pilate, Pilate to Herod, and then back to Pilate. During his judgment, from the time he was accused, he passed through all of these officials. Annas was high priest of the Roman province of Judea in AD 6. And it puts Judea right under Roman rule. So Annas was the Romans' choice for who should be the high priest of that. He was not Jewish by birth. I believe he was Jewish by conviction. This was his chosen religion that he would practice. Pilate was Roman governor of Judea. And ultimately it was Pilate who wasn't convinced about the guilt of Jesus Christ, but he is the one who ultimately ordered his crucifixion, and he was pretty much forced into doing that because of political reasons. So, Annas to Caiaphas. Caiaphas was the high priest of Israel, and he is said to have worked with a lot of the powers that wanted to diminish the growing influence of Jesus Christ. So, Annas to Caiaphas. Caiaphas was a practicing Jew. Then Caiaphas to Pilate. Pilate wasn't convinced. Pilate sent him to Herod. Herod, this is Herod Antipas. This isn't Herod, the one who ordered the slaughter of the innocents, from what I understand.
Yeah, I figured.
Two Herods. There were a bunch of Herods.
And what time was this? You said
this is around
the end of March.
It'd be what we used to call, AD, 1 AD, and or there's before Christ and after Christ. So now it's BCE and all of that, and it's gotten confusing. So
it was like 33 AD, right?
Yeah. So what we're looking at then
So
is
it's going from different.
They're going from different officials, all of whom held power. All of them shipped Jesus to somebody else because all of them had in the back of their mind that this was not going to be a clean deal.
And that was a prank?
And
So
they're
what- yeah.
celebrating
Kind of,
the foolishness and the horror of all of that indecision. And you have to remember, too, that Jesus was mocked and tormented during that whole process of going from official to official to official to official, and nobody giving a clear answer, and your life hangs in the balance with all of this foolishness.
I never heard of. I don't think I remember that. I might have heard of it, but I don't remember him being passed around like that.
He was passed around like that. I do remember that. And I believe it was Pilate's wife, I believe, that she was saying, stay away from this. This is not what you think it is. And but ultimately he was put in a position where he had to rule for crucifixion. And so anyway, some people say that it's a kind of a sardonic holiday that references this passing of Jesus from official to official to official.
So the foolishness of being passed from court to court.
So not a prank, but just something that was a foolish endeavor or activity.
Absolutely.
And that was noted in the 1700s in the
Yeah, this was 1752.
when Benjamin Franklin controlled the media.
No, 1769. The
Yeah.
publication of the London Public Advertiser.
Oh,
And
wait, where was this? Where was that?
The London
So that
Public Advertiser.
So it wasn't in the colonies then.
No, I don't think so. This is in London.
Mm.
London.
Yeah.
And so I think and that was more in reference to the whole concept of Noah. And I think that's pretty pretty interesting.
And what did they call it? You say it again. The paper
Apparently,
was London.
it says that the first reference, a very old reference, and that's in the London Public Advertiser, March 13th, 1769. And that's referencing Noah. And then as a springboard from that reference, the book that I consulted, it's a very old book, I think from 1928, and it's called Curiosities in Public and Popular Customs.
So what do
or
you think the
Superstitions.
purpose of that story was, connecting all those together?
Well, all of these things, if you look at all of it, doesn't it really have a common denominator in that you're celebrating the concept of the arrival of spring or the arrival of relief? And if you've lived through a hard winter and you don't have all the comforts that we have now, you have central heating and you have refrigerators and ways to store food that, is going to be fairly tasty and wholesome when you finally get to eat it. A lot of these things kind of strike me as a lighthearted way of coming out of the doldrums. The religious spin on it, on all of these things at the time, because of the growing power of the churches, I kind of believe, and this is my opinion, that keeping a hand, keeping a presence in customs that were pagan forever, and rebranding that in a way
Or
is certainly
usurping,
consistent.
maybe a better word.
Well, you can call it that, but it's like anything else, If you can ride the wave of Super Bowl Sunday with your own advertising spin on something, they do it. People do it. We still do it.
Just don't use the word Super Bowl. You get sued.
Yeah, well, it's but you can have your party at your bar or at home, and you put that spin on it. You use that umbrella, and tailor it to your your thoughts, what's important to you, and I think that's what we're seeing by these Christian elements applied over something that was really a rite of spring, a rite of passage from cold weather. And certainly the timing of April Fool's Day is right after the equinox, so the spring equinox. So it's highly likely that the roots are absolutely pagan, have to do with marking time by seasons, and certainly by astronomy. And I just think that these Christian references are just that. They're Christianization of a pagan idea. And we've seen that certainly before.
Like most other things, yeah.
So but to me, it's all fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And there are references, other places through history for ways to celebrate this time of year. So, we have the speculation about the word April itself, meaning eye open, which that comes from the Julian calendar, actually, because they named the months. And, so focus on the idea. I think the takeaway for me was it's a pagan holiday, and it's meant to be a cheerful relief, like spring is, from the doldrums of a long, hard winter, a season where nothing is growing. Even if the weather isn't particularly horrible and you're not trying to shovel, 3 feet of snow, the winter is still difficult for people. And again, you have to remember that food storage was not what it is now. And can you put away enough if the winter seems to be prolonged, or if spring is delayed, or if there's a particularly rainy holiday? So all of these ways of joking with each other and having a laugh that isn't mean-spirited, except maybe in those situations where you're mad because people aren't jumping on supporting the new calendar idea. And again, people didn't, the whole idea of having a calendar was not something for people in those time periods like it is now, they were more in tune with seasons. They were more in tune with nature in terms of how they marked time than a piece of paper that you hang on the wall. So, and again, it was only an elite group who knew the inner workings of all of that, who managed that, who announced that sort of thing. And so pretty interesting.
How did we get to where we are today, where we just, I mean, April Fools, is that, I guess that's on some calendars. It's obviously not a national holiday. But do they celebrate it around the world? Or
Looks like it. Looks
didn't
like
know
I
that,
don't know
see?
about Eastern nations, but I'm,
Interesting.
it is.
I do remember that was a thing for quite a while. People would come up and pretend to pat you on the back.
Yeah.
And they really put that sign on there, so that really does connect almost directly to the origin of April Fool's, sounds like.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I remember, when we talk about somebody going around with a sign on their back, whether it's a fish or kick me or some silly thing, and everybody else kind of playing along. It is, in a way, a team building thing. That's what we would call it today in a corporate circle. But I remember when my kids were little, and April Fool's Day, of course, they come up with childish pranks. And they used to like to put lemon warheads or lemon drops or some very sour candy in my tea. And for me, the most wonderful part of all of that was watching the conspiracy, and they'd be looking at each other, and I could tell they couldn't wait. And I would delay drinking that sip of tea as long as I could, because it was such a delight to see the conspiracy unfolding, because, of course, they're not very good at hiding it, and they were dying for me to drink that tea. And then when I drank the tea, I'd have to make actually, it tasted kind of good. And I forgot about this until now. And throwing a few, lemon drops or warheads in a cup of tea might not be a bad idea for a cure for our allergy throats.
Yeah, that actually sounds delightful.
It
does,
wasn't
yeah.
bad, but I had to
Lemon.
pretend. I had to gasp. And, oh, my goodness.
We'll get you. I'm going to put lemon in your tea.
These lemon drops. It was actually good. At the time, I wasn't as much of a coffee drinker as I am now. And I don't think I would like lemon drops or warheads in my coffee. But watching the kids, and I just love it. I love that memory. And I do think they might have invented something there that didn't occur to me until now.
I made my sister some lime Kool-Aid, and instead of using sugar, I used salt. And then she punched me in the stomach.
So who was the fool there?
But I think deep down, she must have thought it was a pretty funny joke.
Was she a lot older than you?
Yeah, like 6 years older.
Okay.
She still is. She still is 6 years older than me.
So it hurt.
sense,
It
yeah.
hurt when she got after
Not emotionally.
you. Oh, okay.
Physically, it hurt.
Did you ever prank her again? The
No.
next year?
No.
You decided it wasn't worth it?
No, I got all I needed out of that.
How about you, Dave? How about you?
A punch in the stomach.
No. I mean, pranking people.
Me pranking? Oh, no. I was way too shy and repressed to do that. And just a very nice little boy.
Oh, that's what I love about
Well,
you.
actually, I do have one memory. I can't be 100% for sure that it was April Fool's, though. And I'm not sure why.
Is it about you bringing her flowers?
No.
This is real, and
That-
it is
that's
not
true.
funny.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I
I remember when I was younger, though, I thought it would be funny to just pile up a bunch of clothes and stuff in my bed to make it look as if I was still in bed sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I remember. I don't know.
Were you trying to skip out of school?
Well, but that's the thing. Maybe, but that doesn't make any sense, does it? Because they'd come in there and say, "Oh, you're getting late. It's too late. Get up," and then come and pound on me or something. But then they'd find out right away that, oh, he's not in there. But I don't know what the scenario would be that I would sneak out and go to school. I'm not sure that makes any sense, really.
Haha, I'm going to be in school. They're not going to think I'm not in school.
Yeah.
You know what I think? What I think is really funny to me is to do the pranks and stuff on other days besides April 1st, because that gets people off guard. So when you yell April Fools, they're really surprised.
This is true. I can't argue with that either. Wow. I think, the old putting salt in the sugar bowl thing, or in medieval times, I understand that one of the big pranks was to disguise yucky foods and make it up to look like something yummy and delicious. And then kind of like my kids.
You mean like fast food commercials?
Oh, don't they look wonderful?
Is that what you
They do.
did then? You didn't tell us what some of your
No,
experiences
my
with pranking
best
people.
one that I ever did was there was a lot of pre-prep. I went and got brown poster board, and I cut up a bunch of E's, the letter E, the capital letter E. I painstakingly cut those out, brown E's. Then I put them in a cookie tin, and I offered, I put some weight in the bottom, some beans.
Don't say it.
I offered people
Oh my
brown.
gosh.
I go, here, I have a tin. I didn't say I baked. I have a tin of brownies for you. And I'd kind of run it together, and I'd hand people the tin, and I'd do it just before I was leaving them, and they'd take it and thank me, and then later they'd call up and swear at me, which, of course, was delightful. And the whole point, and I
That's
knew it
kinda
was
dumb.
a winner.
That's really dumb.
It was.
But it was creative. That was pretty funny.
It was
That's
creative. And somewhere, because I made extras so I could do it again another year, somewhere in my bins, probably of old tax nonsense and this and that, I have an envelope filled with brown E's.
You can throw some nuts in the tin.
So eat them then.
No, there was a nut passing them out.
So the thing about the flowers, that's true.
Yes.
I did. And I came in from work, and on my way stopped to get a few things at the store and all that. And so I announced when I came back that I had brought my wife flowers.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "Oh, that's nice, that's nice." But really what it was, me being a wise ass and all, it was just 2 packages of flour
Yeah.
for her to bake with. that you had made.
Unbleached
Yeah.
and whole wheat.
But you're such a good baker.
See that?
What a bouquet.
No, the bouquet comes when I'm baking him up some delightful treats. But
And then you came up with a scenario that, we're in divorce court at some point. And I'm saying to the judge, but I brought her flowers all the time.
he does bring me flowers all the time. I can't lie. He does. But it's very, very self-serving.
Well, clearly you didn't use them to make brown E's.
That's right. See, you had enough
No,
flour.
and I'm not gonna either.
You had enough flour to make them, that's for sure.
No, oh, that's right. That's right. And but I will say, flowers wilt. Bouquet flowers wilt. But the other flower, I can store that, and we can have lots of cookies.
Speaking of brownies, isn't there like a common prank to put like laxative in brownies?
Yeah, I don't approve.
No, that's not nice.
Unless you're
that's
constipated.
poisoning somebody. And
Really?
because I cook a lot, I would never play a prank like that, because then everything I cooked from then on would be suspect.
What if you put like pot and laxatives in a brownie?
Not this girl. Never.
That could be interesting.
Never. And now with all of these people that have horrible food allergies and stuff, you have to be so aware and so careful of all of that. So if you're playing pranks today, forego the laxative in the tasty treats. It's not a good plan. And it can get you in trouble, too. You've seen things where people bake up stuff in brownies and then leave it around, and some little kid gets a chair and climbs up and gets it and eats it. And the next thing, there's a trip to the emergency room, and rightfully so.
Well, that doesn't
Who
sound
did that
funny.
is in trouble.
That doesn't sound funny at all.
It isn't funny.
Okay.
It isn't funny.
And the other substances that you sometimes bake into brownies and things.
Yeah. Put it up really, really, really out of the way. Guys, we're
Wait,
almost
are you
out of time,
advocating
and
to-
I'm not even kidding.
You're not advocating to do that with brownies,
No,
right?
I'm not.
Okay,
Please.
just to make that clear.
Please. We are almost out of time, and I think it was good for us to take a break from all the nervous news. I have so much teed up that we need to talk about.
That was a big sacrifice because there's, on Fool's Day, there should be plenty of news there.
There is a lot of news, a lot of really important things that we have to think about, but try not to get so nervous about that we can't be effective in other ways. Do count your blessings. There are many. And do something that's just joyful and fun today.